Okay, here's the profitability per business. This is really interesting, actually. Despite having a lot less sales, a lot of these other businesses are more profitable than Sony's main quote-unquote games business. So the music business is more profitable. It's actually technically the most profitable business, at least for that quarter. The hardest thing to think about with these bigger companies is just how much are they making investments that are obscuring earnings. That's the most important thing. And some of these companies make a long-term commitment to doing that, and they're artificially depressing their earnings, and you have to think about that. All right, we got another quarter in the books, although I wanted to get the TV, separate the TV business out. When I was a kid, the biggest appliance you could have in a middle-class household is a television. So me and my dad were obsessed with TVs and how many inches they were, what kind of color spectrum they had, and all that stuff. Eventually you realize that wasn't the be-all, end-all, but... Is imaging and sensing solutions projectors? Or maybe they make chips? I don't know. We're looking at Sony, S-O-N-Y, and it's also mostly trades in Japan. So that's the main Japan stock ticker, which is 6758. All right, we still haven't even started our Sony analysis. We're just kind of glancing at the income statement. They've definitely grown in the last year, but that doesn't mean much. They could have shrunk every year before that, right? The most important one, the fiscal 2021 numbers. This is what we've been waiting for. You ever looked at Sony? We're going to learn quite a bit about their business after looking through this PDF, which I'm uploading to my GitHub. Make sure you join the GitHub, github.com/𝗏𝗏𝗏. If you're not on GitHub, welcome to the 21st century. 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, the singer of 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, one of my favorite bands, even he's on GitHub. There are kids on GitHub. So what are you doing if you don't have a GitHub account? Join today. GitHub.com. It looks like the March quarter is the least profitable, but I want to make sure I'm getting this right. This looks like on average they've had, yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's somewhere between 10 and 17 times earnings, which is pretty big delta. So I guess PS5 came out. Is that what happened here? Here's cash flow statement. So, okay, this is great. This is really helpful. So cash flow from operations for the full year, it looks so different for the quarter, but this reconciles everything pretty nicely, actually. And it looks like cash flow and net income are not wildly different, which they look like, unfortunately, they looked like they were quite different before. So this is basically means the company makes 1.1 trillion, made 1.1 trillion in cash in 2021, and made 1.2 trillion in cash in 2022. Now the market cap is, and that's in yen, right? So the market cap is about 15 trillion. So would you pay 15 trillion to get 1.2 trillion a year, possibly a growing 1.2 trillion a year? That seems pretty good, but is that free cash flow or not? We got to look at CapEx. Let's see, they do have some CapEx, so that changes the game a bit. So let's calculate what the CapEx is. Property for PP&E and other intangibles. I want to see what exactly is in there, but it's quite a bit, actually. So that's decreases free cash flow quite a lot. So now we're talking about, instead of 1.1 and 1.2 trillion, we're talking about 700 and 800 billion. So would you pay 15 trillion for 800 billion a year? That ratio is 19 times, roughly. It certainly depends on if that's growing or not, right? So the music and pictures business is not necessarily a growth business, but okay, let's look at the income for those businesses. Okay, this is just revenue. Let's drop that down too. All right, 2656.278.2739.763. This is the gaming revenue. So this is probably, it's about 30% of revenue, but it's probably going to be a bit bigger for the next. Say it's 100 or something. Okay, got it. That makes more sense. Yeah, it's around 30% of revenue, no matter how you slice it. Music did grow. Some people really like the music business. I don't know much about it. Film grew, obviously, due to the COVID rebound. I think their electronics business is actually kind of the sleeper. It's a very large business. It's almost as big as games. It's probably not as profitable, but imaging. I still want to understand what exactly is in that imaging business too. All right, so those are the segments. They all grew, and I think they're all growing. Now let's look at this. This is really key. This is the income per business. I wish more conglomerates would do this. I wish Amazon would do this. This is the secret sauce behind Amazon, right? Is that you don't know what their actual retail business margins are. And I think they've been hiding and lying about their quote-unquote unprofitable retail business. I think it's quite profitable. They just invest a lot of money in things like Alexa and stuff like that is not profitable. I certainly, if I were them, I wouldn't want Walmart to know what my margins were on retail. But when you hire people from Amazon and you interview people, you get to figure it out anyway. So, but also Wall Streeters may not get to know. All right, it's a really interesting mix here. All of the businesses are profitable. It's like every business is profitable. Sony's like always been like, I don't know, has it always been like some? I think it was a fairly well-run company. Then it got a reputation for not being so well-run, and then now it's back. I think 𝗕𝗏𝗏 attacked them briefly. The games margin is less than you would think. The games margin is not that different from the music. Well, the music margin is actually highest. Let's do the percentage. Games up margin, music up margin, pictures up margin, entertainment up margin, imaging up margin, financial up margin. Op is operating. All right, so games is only, and that's tiny, 13% margin. Entertainment is the lowest, which makes sense because they're commodity, not commodity, but they're consumer electronics, is televisions, right? Can't be that profitable. Imaging, which is still like the one mystery unit, I don't know what they do. Margins are actually more in the middle of the pack. And financial is low margin. Okay, so the highest margin business is music and pictures. Games, imaging, and financial is more in the middle, or games and imaging, and then entertainment and financial are low. But it's amazing that all the margin profile is kind of relatively similar. There isn't one business that's like 50% margin and the other that's like -10. It seems like an okay stock, neither here nor there. I wonder what the business looks like in bad years when this PS5 cycle is not going their way. So that's kind of the next step for me, is to look at the annuals going back several years and also mark down kind of like what are the release dates and stuff like that for PS5. And I'm assuming there'll be a PS6 someday, although I know these consoles cycles are kind of stretching out a little bit and they're hitting different, as the kids say these days. I don't like it when cash flow from year to year is different, but one year they say it's this, the next year they say it's that. Not good. It's interesting, they had cash flow of 900 billion yen. So it actually was closer to like 15 times earnings a couple years ago. So maybe they'll have cash flow of over 1 trillion yen this time around. I know they're guiding to something closer to that. That's kind of an interesting perspective. Let's look at games here. Definitely you can see the impact of the launch of PS5. Pictures, 854. Here's the operating income for this year. Wow, imaging and sensing. Yeah, so games is really not that profitable, whether it's a launch year or not. Just more revenue in the launch year. It's really interesting. You would think the games business would be really, really profitable in the PS5 console cycle or whatever, the new console cycle. Okay, so here you saw that was a down year, interestingly. Okay, 45.098. Cool, I think that's good enough. So that was down 5% year over year. Interesting, very interesting. Cash flow, again, cash flow from operations, steady over $1 trillion. They do have big CapEx commitments, but wow. So, it's like very consistent company. Obviously, with a large cap stock, that's what you get. It's like almost like a bond. Really reliable. You can see game revenue declined in 2020 because they had to do the transition from PS4 to PS5. And you can see we're going to have like record revenue for games. But I'm not sure we're going to have record profit. We'll see. So far, the cash flow for this year has been kind of elusive. But it could be like the fat years of 24 and 25 could be the fatter years of profit. Yeah, it looks like the gaming business gets more profitable towards maybe the later part of the cycle. But I'm just guessing. Look at the game's margin though. It's like fucking 13, 12, 13, 13. It doesn't move. That's all throughout cycle changes. You know, PS4, PS5, it's still 13%. I assume they have a plan to get that up higher. But look at the music margin in this year, 2019, 30%. I wonder what that's from. Maybe they got some big artists, some big hit. Interesting how low the pictures margin was, but maybe that was COVID. But like 2019 should have been no COVID. It looks like they've improved margins across the board throughout the company, which is pretty impressive. But cash flow hasn't changed, so maybe that's all just accounting gobbledygook. One more year? Why not? Looks like 2018 was remarkably similar to 2019. This company is just very tricky from an accounting perspective. Right? Cash flow is very different. Okay, so cash flow is like almost like a metronome. 1.2 trillion, 1.3 trillion, 1.1 trillion, 1.2 trillion. Just doesn't change. That's not a bad thing. Looks like CapEx though is like really small. They used to be really profitable. It's just so strange. We see margins go up on the net income side, but cash flow kind of flat to down. Very unusual. Bigger CapEx footprint. But you can see they clearly have earnings potential of 1 trillion yen a year. Cash flow potential, I should say. Which on the current market cap of 15 trillion is, it's pretty good for a slow grower, but so the average growth is say 5%. So earnings should grow say 7% with a little leverage. So 7%. If you told me you could buy a bond that grows its coupon 7% a year for 15 times, I'd buy it. But I wouldn't write home to mama about it. It's nice stock, but not something you jump for joy about. Oh yeah, there's semiconductors. That's probably what. That's what I figured it was. They used to call it semiconductors. Now they call it imaging. So they probably make chips for like televisions and projectors and things like that. I think they got out of the laptop business, right? looks like they sold one of their businesses here. It could have been laptops or phones, or maybe just declined rapidly. Either way. And now let's look at profit. Oh, look, so games was not very profitable at all in 2018, and that I think was mid to late cycle for PS4. But it looks like 2018 was just kind of a bad year in general. Yeah, it looks like music is like their best division from a profitability perspective, and arguably music doesn't quite give games a run for its money, but pound for pound it certainly does. And then music plus imaging is actually bigger than games in terms of profit. So games as a percentage of profit is, say, yeah, it's about the same as, honestly, revenue. So I don't know, verdict on Sony is it's okay, I guess. You know, not something to write home about, but could be an okay stock if it gets cheaper, or it's certainly worth paying attention to given their status in the ecosystem of several different spheres of influence, as they used to say.